I don't know if you've heard it before, but there is something called the fur burners theory. This theory basically states that our lives can be think of as a stove with fur burners on it, where one burner is for work, another for health, another for relationships, and another for hobbies. And according to that theory, every time you turn up the heat in one burner, the heat in the other burners goes down. And that's kind of my problem with medicine, that I feel that to practice it, especially to practice it the way I wanted to practice it, you almost have to accept a life where all of the other burners, except for the one of work, are pretty much turned off. And I just find that very sad. To be honest, I didn't thought about this too much as a student or as an intern because I was just so focused on my studies and on playing the game that I almost never stopped to reflect if that game made any sense at all. But as the years went on, little by little, I started to realize that yes, medicine was in fact awesome, but it also stealed the most valuable thing I had, my time. This struck me one day when I went to visit my grandparents, because you see, I was so focused all those years on studies, and I always convinced myself that I was so busy that for me, taking an afternoon and spending time with them felt almost like a sacrifice. So I didn't visit them as often, and when I did went to go and visit them, I didn't stay for long. Until one day, I went ahead and paid them a visit on an afternoon, and I tried to do what I used to love doing with them when I was little, which is to play a board game. And in that moment, for the first time ever, my granddad wasn't able to play. His hands just couldn't. That's when I realized that I had lost all of the chances I could to play one last board game with him because I was just so busy studying, so busy seeking that success that everybody seemed to talk about. This made me think a lot, and I started to realize that if I continued to live like this, the same thing would start to happen with all of the other aspects of my life. I would start to lose the opportunities to play the last game with all of them. The last game with my partner, my friends, my family, even with my hobbies. Because I don't know if you've ever tried it, but sometimes you try to pick up a hobby right where you left off just to realize that it's not the same anymore, that you don't enjoy it as much as you used to. And so that's when I decided that despite my passion for medicine, I was not going to live a life where I kept sacrificing the things that I value the most just to be successful and earn a living. So naturally, I started to look for solutions, and I realized that I had about three main options to choose from. Number one, I could enter a less demanding specialty, something that allows me to have a better work life balance, something like dermatology or ophthalmology or radiology. But the truth is that none of those specialties were ever of any interest to me. I just enjoyed internal medicine and infectious diseases. That was my thing, and I really didn't had any intention to study anything else. So that wasn't an option for me. Number two, I could dedicate myself to private practice because, as you may know, private practice is a little bit more relaxed, more flexible, demands less hours, and pays better. So you can have a better work life balance. But again, this also didn't work a lot for me because the thing I really loved about medicine, the thing that made it really a career and not just another job, was the academic part, was doing rounds, was being able to teach students, was being able to take the time and do exercises with them and teach them how to interpret a EKG. Those kind of things were the things that really fired my engines, that really made me love medicine in the first place. So yeah, this option wasn't really that appealing to me. And number three, I could go somewhere that pays really, really well and just work part-time. That's the option I ended up choosing, and I ended up choosing to do so in the US. So from that point forward, I started to dedicate myself completely to achieving this new goal of mine. So I studied for the steps, I did research, I published a paper, I improved my English, I improved my CV, I did like every little thing they wanted. And after a couple of years of work, I had done pretty much everything they wanted. Everything except doing a rotation in the state. That was really the only thing missing. But of course, there was a problem. By the time I had done everything else, by the time I was done with all of the other exams and I started to apply to rotations, rotations started to close. Because, of course, a global pandemic had to occur. So I didn't know what to do in the moment because I had nothing else to do. I had no more exams to do, but also no rotation to apply to. And yes, although I could have practiced medicine in those few months, I didn't really wanted to do that. So at least not in Colombia. So I felt kind of stuck. I felt that life had put an obstacle in my way and was making me stop when all I wanted to do was to keep moving forward. So, under those circumstances, I decided to do the only thing that made sense for me at the time, which was to take some time off. I just thought, okay, I've worked this hard for these many years. I think I can use these 2 months while everything reopens to just spend time with my family, maybe resume some of my old hobbies, experience a little bit of that life that I've always wanted to had. But the thing you have to understand about me is that I've never been the type of person that just takes vacations to binge on Netflix endlessly and stays in bed. No, I always want to stay active. I always kind of love to do stuff. Of course, not just any type of stuff and not for 12 hours a day, but I do love to stay engaged with some sort of challenge, some sort of hobby. So during those few months, I started to dedicate myself to what was my hobby or my challenge at the time, which was literally shooting videos in my room, just like I'm doing now. And so I started to share videos about the things I learned from the USMLE, some tips and tricks to earn a better score in that test. I also started to interview more and more doctors. I also created this very same channel to improve my speaking skills. I started to share tips about effective study techniques. I created a few courses on thoracic radiology and microbiology and the science of effective learning. I mean, I literally delved deep into this hobby that I was having. And as I kept doing this, the strangest thing started to happen. I started to earn a living. And no, nothing like the $300,000 that I could make as an attending in the US, but a decent amount nonetheless. At least something that made me live comfortably in Colombia, be independent, save some money, buy fancy stuff here and there, and kind of enjoy my life. And this was very, very weird because I don't know about you, but I've always had this notion that the only people who are able to make it online, who are able to make a living online, are the famous and the charismatic. And here I was, nor famous, nor charismatic, and still somehow earning a living. So very, very weird. But this was also very weird because it started to show me a completely different way to earn a living. Because I don't know if you're aware, but most of your income as a creator, which is the thing I basically become, it doesn't come from the stuff you keep doing every day. Just like a doctor. A doctor earns his living by going to the hospital every single day. He gets paid in every single month because of the stuff he did in that particular month. The income of a creator works very differently. Most of the income, at least for me, most of the income I have, like 90% of my income, doesn't come from the things I did that month. Instead, it comes from the things I did in the past, from videos I published months ago or even years ago. People usually call this passive income, and passive income is really, really liberating because if someday I simply want to take a day off, well, I just take a day off. If someday I just want to take a whole weekend with my family to go on vacation, I can just take a weekend off and go with my family on vacation and nothing really happens. Like my income stays pretty much the same. Sure, you still have to put some type of effort and be creative and keep learning new skills and keep improving your craft, but this kind of work gives you a lot more freedom and autonomy of your time. And with that newfound freedom and autonomy, you're able to do stuff like spend more quality time with family and friends, to practice all hobbies, to read books that you never thought you could read. I mean, I was literally reading some books that I never thought I could have the time to read. History, psychology, philosophy, literature, a whole world that I just thought I would never have the time to properly delve into. So, what did I do with all this new information about a different lifestyle? Not much. I mean, I still felt like this was just too good to be true, like kind of unrealistic to have as a permanent lifestyle, that it was going to be transitory, and that the wisest thing was just to keep taking advantage of these few months to rest, recharge batteries, earning a few bucks on the side, and then keep working and focusing on my plan to enter residency in the US. So that's precisely what I did. I continued doing this kind of stuff until I eventually got notified that rotations in the US were starting to reopen. So I applied, I got accepted, and I started my rotation. However, from the moment I set foot inside of that hospital, I started to feel very strangely because I started to feel completely out of place. And that was very weird for me because I've always felt very like at home, like a fish in the water while being in the hospital, especially when I was doing a rotation on something that I enjoyed, like infectious diseases. And yet, here I was staying in an amazing hospital in my favorite specialty with very, very kind people, and still for some reason feeling completely out of place. After speaking about this with my family and with my girlfriend, I thought that maybe this was just a problem of adaptation. After all, I had spent the last few months living a vacation type of lifestyle, so maybe I just needed a couple of weeks to get used to being a doctor again. So that's what I did. I took a deep breath and I gave myself the chance to adapt. And I actually did that really, really fast. After just a couple of weeks, I was used again to waking up early, to going to the gym before rounds, to studying in the afternoons, to going to the hospital 8 to 12 hours a day, to that kind of stuff. And in fact, I even started to have really amazing days when everything went well, where everything went according to plan, where I had energy and I crushed it in the gym and I got to help patients and I got congratulated in rounds. Like if everything went the way it was supposed to. And yet, even in those days, I still had that feeling that this wasn't really my place. Of course, my natural instinct was to keep looking for problems, keep looking for things that weren't as perfect as they should, to attribute my feelings to those type of things. But I eventually realized that those minor inconveniences and problems weren't really the issue, weren't really at the core of my feeling. The problem was really that this just wasn't my dream anymore. Yes, this was very dreamy. This was perfect. As I told you, people were kind. The hospital was great. I was in my favorite specialty. I was learning. I was helping patients. Everything was fine. But this just wasn't the thing that really moved my engines anymore. I had a different dream. I had a different pathway that I wanted to pursue. And that's when I realized that what I first interpreted as an obstacle or as a punishment from life was actually the best opportunity I could have ever had to discover a better pathway, a better way to live my life. I don't know if things happen for a reason. People usually say this, oh, things happen for a reason. I don't know if things happen for a reason or not, but it sure feels that way. So, after coming to terms with this, I decided that I needed to leave medicine. But taking the decision wasn't as easy as it sounds. In fact, I just kept changing my mind over and over again. I remember that I constantly called my girlfriend telling her one day, you know what, I am gonna quit medicine. Just to call her the next day saying, you know what, medicine is not that bad. Most of this indecision came basically due to fear. I was fearful of making a decision like this because, to be honest, I've never been good at making these sort of life changing decisions and risking it all. In fact, I think that's one of the reasons that explains why I chose to study medicine, because medicine is kind of like this very well established and restrictive path. I mean, yes, it has alternatives and choices, and you can go into dermatology or radiology or surgery, and you can do private practice or stay in the academic field or do research. So you have options, but in the end, all the pathways are kind of established for you, are kind of very restricted in the sense that you know that if you turn right, you're gonna end up there, and you know exactly how there looks like. In contrast, this new dream of mine was everything except established and restrictive. I mean, it literally had no path. I imagine it like a open field where you can go anywhere you want, left, right, center, go back, go forward. You can do whatever you want. That's part of the appeal, that you have total freedom and total autonomy over your time and your decisions. But it's also kind of scary because there's no one telling you, okay, so if you go here, you're gonna end up there. First of all, you don't know what's here and you don't know what's there. So that is very scary because you automatically start filling those gaps with potential problem, with pessimistic thinking. You start thinking, oh, but what if I turn here and then this happens and that doesn't work and I lose my channel and I lose everything and I end up in the street. So the way I eventually handled this, like this fear of mine, was just to accept the nature of the problem. That the nature of the problem is that every pro has an associated con. Like that's the way it is. So yes, the medical pathway is very secure and that's appealing, but that is precisely what makes it very restrictive and takes away your freedom and autonomy. And the same thing happens with my path. You have a lot of freedom and autonomy, but you lose a bit of that certainty, a bit of that safety. So you kind of have to choose what is more important to you. What are you more willing to put in the line to risk in order to get the other value? And I realized that for me, it's more important freedom and autonomy than security. Another thing I ended up realizing was that pessimistic thinking can be applied both ways. Because, yes, next month YouTube can be taken down, and my channel can get demonetized, and income policies can change any minute. But you know what? I can also lose my license. I can also get fired. I can also make a terrible mistake and get a lawsuit. I mean, a bunch of bad stuff can happen either way. So, basing my decision on the fact that things can go wrong is a non starter because everything can always go wrong. And in the end, the most important thing is not that bad things can happen, is that you can't actively prevent them and implement solutions in case they do occur. That's why any semi reasonable doctor pays an insurance and stays updated with the literature, because that prevents bad things from happening and solves them a little bit in case they do happen. So, what I did to help me see things a little bit more clearly was take out a piece of paper and write down all of my fears, all of the things that were clogging up my brain that I thought could end up ruining me. I put them all in paper. And beside each one of them, I started to write down strategies I could implement into both to prevent them from happening and to solve them or to fix them in case they did happen. By doing this exercise, I realized that as horrible as some problems were, there was always something I could do to solve them, or at least to ameliorate them. And that even in the worst case scenario, where literally the internet breaks down, I can still find a solution in that case. For instance, I can resume my medical practice. And yes, I'm aware that having a gap that I'm creating in this very same moment reduces dramatically my chances of entering, let's say, in the United States and even in Colombia. But fortunately enough, this is a very, very big world and there are plenty of other options available. For instance, I for myself know that my plan B in case everything fails is Spain, because A, Spain has a great quality of life, and I really appreciate that. And B, because entering residency in Spain is a matter of just standing out in one single exam called MIR. That's it. They don't look at your CV, at your publications, your gaps, nothing. All they care for is your performance in that single standardized exam. And if there's one thing I've learned how to do really well is ace medical exams. So that's my plan B. In case everything goes wrong, that's what I'll be doing then. And that's also why my medical diploma is being validated in Europe as we speak. Now, the other thing that sometimes worried me was this thought that giving up medicine meant accepting that I've wasted the last 8 years of my life. And to be honest, I now think that this is nonsense. I mean, I don't know if I emphasized it enough, but the reason I now have the job that I have is because I entered a career that I loved so much that it led me to create a YouTube channel about it. I think that our past is almost always conducive to our present, even in ways that we do not fully comprehend. So I truly believe that if I hadn't go through everything I went through, if I hadn't studied medicine, if I hadn't tried to apply to residency in the States, I would probably wouldn't be here. So under that kind of reasoning, I don't think I wasted anything because everything I went through was crucial to help me get here. But even if I did accept it that my past wasn't at all conducive to my present, I still believe that choosing to stay in medicine would have been a mistake. The way I see it is like this. No matter what happens, and no matter what I do, I already spent 8 years of my life studying medicine. And nothing I will do, nothing I can do, will bring those 8 years back. Those 8 years are gone. So I can choose to have wasted 8 years of my life and live a life that doesn't make me happy, or I can choose to have wasted 8 years of my life and live a life that does make me happy now. In either case, the past will remain the same because guess what? The past always remains the same. But in one option, I get to be happy. So you tell me, which option makes more sense? Alright, and the last fear that used to make me hesitate my decision a lot was thinking that this wasn't the best moment to make the jump. I mean, I already knew and I already had established that I wanted to make the jump. I just didn't knew when it was best to do so. And some part of me always thought that the best thing to do would be to just finish residency first, secure some kind of future in case things go south, build a bigger audience in the meantime, and then, after 3 to 5 years of doing so, then make the jump. For quite a while, this seemed like the most reasonable plan, like the plan with best of both worlds. However, I realized a couple of things. First of all, I realized that doing residency, like everything, has an associated cost opportunity. that by choosing to do residency, I'm not only choosing to do residency, I'm also accepting to have 80 hours per week where I don't get to improve my craft, where I don't get to create more quality content, where I don't get to improve my skills as a creator. I realized that if my dream is truly to live off my content, the best chance I have of doing so is by investing all of my efforts into it, not just the couple of hours I have after a 12-hour shift. Additionally, I realized that if I ever want to quit my job as a doctor, this is the safest time to do so. I mean, think about it. When is it better to quit? When you're in your 20s without many responsibilities and with few bills to pay and with basically no one depending on you, or when you're in your 40s with a family to take care of, a ton of bills to pay, and a lifestyle to maintain. Alright, and finally, because I'm sure that some of you will post this in a comment, no, I don't feel bad leaving medicine, because I believe I can still help a lot of people, even if I don't get to do so as a doctor. So far, I've tried to help, and I think I've helped a lot of medical students around the world to be better students, and that makes me really, really proud. Now, I'm not sure if that's what I'll keep doing from now on, because I'm currently experimenting a bit more with general personal growth in a new channel that I recently opened, which is in Spanish, so probably not something you're really interested. But yeah, I still believe I can make a difference. And well, that's what I'll try to do from now on. But yeah, that's basically my reasoning behind why I quit and what I'm gonna be doing next. Now, in case you also want to explore other more creative careers different than medicine or whatever you happen to be studying, I have a recommendation that might help you in that process. That recommendation is a class that I recently watched in Skillshare called Make Creativity Your Career by Andy J. Pizza. So this is basically a class that can help you figure out what is your creative identity and how you can use it to, as the title says, make creativity your career. It's really simple, really short, but it's also full of interactive exercises that make you get perspective on things and take action. And that is really the beauty of Skillshare. That is one of the few platforms in the market that really go that extra mile to make the student the active player in the learning process. In case you didn't know, Skillshare also offers a ton of other classes on a wide variety of topics like productivity, habit formation, animation, personal growth. You can even find some classes on cooking. And all these classes are of high quality. They all allow you to interact and leave questions, create projects. They even allow you to teach, post classes, and help others grow in their process. I, for myself, published a class over there called The Science of Effective Learning, where I basically teach the best evidence-based learning techniques for students. And the best thing is that you can start learning all of these topics for free. You just need to be one of the first 1,000 subscribers that joins using the link in the description below. With that link, you get a whole free month of Skillshare, and in that month, you can watch all of the classes you want in all the topics you're interested in, and everything completely for free. So make sure to use this opportunity and start exploring your creativity today. Thanks a lot Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one.